So in my last video, I talked a little bit about step number 1, which is to look in the mirror and actually appreciate and love who you are. Love your strengths, learn more about your strengths, take the time with you. But a lot of us had the privilege of enjoying some time to do that over the past few years during the pandemic. And if that's you and you've already had plenty of time to get in touch with how wonderful and great you are, great. Step number 2, it's time to talk about the shadows. Okay, now when I'm talking about the shadows, yes, I'm talking about your personal shadows. You need to dive in. You need to go to therapy, get healing, find out what kind of traumas are driving your decision making and what kind of traumas you've experienced in life that you may or may not have acknowledged. But you also need to get in touch with the shadow part of your ancestry and of your true roots, where you come from. So I find it very interesting in the United States how a lot of us, white people in particular, really like to claim being American, and we quickly lose our identity as, British, German, Polish, whatever, what it might be, right? Now we're privileged in that we can go onto ancestry.com, get our DNA sample, and be connected back to our ancestors, sometimes 10, 15 generations. That's wonderful, right? Black folks in America are not so lucky. They do not have that ability, right? Because why? Because white people in America did not allow them to maintain history, etc., because they were enslaved, right? They were enslaved. That's a real part of real American history. Not only is it a real part of American history, but it's a real part of 400 years of American history. That means it's highly likely that someone in your family line was involved in, participated in, or otherwise ignored visible slavery within their lifetime. It's highly likely. Even if you had a few family members that were, in the Underground Railroad or what have you, the truth is you probably had a lot more who were involved in some way in enslaving human beings. Now, does that mean you should feel guilty? Not necessarily, but you should know about it. You should learn about it. You should get to the truth of it and then process how you feel about that, what that means, what you think you need to do about that, what that means for you and your family. It's a personal journey, true, but it needs to be done, and you have to be willing to address the reality of your shadow, of your ancestry, of your roots, as well as the joy and awesomeness and connectivity of being connected to your ancestry and your roots and those people even before Christianity, maybe, and what those spiritual practices were, and what those customs were, and what part of the earth they lived on, right? Like, what was the landscape where your people were indigenous to? These are awesome questions and all a part of diving into your shadow self.